punt return duties, which we haven't seen really before. What's kind of going on with that room for you right now?
Well, Antonio worked with the ones, the twos, and the threes. He's working with the special teams. Brian Robinson worked with the ones, the twos, and he's worked with the threes as well. And he also working with special teams. So, that's what we're doing.
Is that just, obviously you always talk about position flexibility and having guys kind of know different roles, but obviously for Antonio being the starting back, we haven't seen him in that. Is that just you want to get Robinson more with the ones, or is Antonio, hey, we may need you to do some other things?
We want to be able to use all our players.
With Scott going to the sideline, when was that determined in the offseason? Was that before Carson was, or was that kind of an adjustment made after Carson?
I think it was an adjustment made after Carson. I think part of it, too, is just in talking with Scott, talking about communications in the field. We just feel that this is something that gives us an opportunity to be right there and get instant feedback as opposed to having to have it cycle through a quarterback coach and then to the
Is that some feedback Carson gave you, like, hey, I like my play caller on the sideline or anything like that?
No, it's a conversation Scott and I had.
Is there a competition for the starting running back job?
There's always been a competition for the positions on this team.
Today's practice, were there things in particular? We noticed some yelling, some barking, player rolling into the quarterback.
I don't mind the barking. I just don't like some of the things that happen.
At this point in camp, how do you feel about the team's effort, their tempo, everything like that going in camp?
I think it's pretty good. We started out with almost a completely live drill, with the exception of taking the running backs to the ground. And then we just went back to our thud tempo after that.
As a former player, now coach, what's it like having to compete with teammates who you spend hours with, who become your friends and your close, peers, but you're also trying to take their job from them? How do players work that balance, and what's that experience like?
Well, from the experience, it just tells you compete, do the best you can, and see what happens. I mean, if you worry too much about what everybody else is doing, I think you lose the opportunity to play well and focus on you. It goes back to what I've said before. Focus on what's important. The interesting thing is, okay, he did a great job, good, but I got to go out and do a great job. I got to go out and compete. I got to do my job.
What goes into the thinking of making the roster cuts? I mean, how much of it is preseason versus camp or something else?
And that's a big part of it. I mean, going through the preseason, you look at guys for their value on special teams. You look at their value for developmental, their ability to get better as a player, and then you look at their value for depth. When you're looking at the young guys, some of the other battles are a little bit different because you're looking at the potential for starter, and that's a pretty intense one. You're looking for one where, okay, there's a rotation. We're going to use a group of guys. Like wide receiver, we have 6 guys that we say we got to have. Okay, who are those 6 guys and how is their rotation going to be? What are they going to do? What are their skill sets? How do they fit us? Look at the backs, and we sit there and say, okay, whether that number's 3 or 4, what's the combination? And again, a lot of this goes back to what I had in Carolina, and I was very fortunate. When you have a Jonathan Stewart and a D'Angelo Williams and a Fozzie Whitaker, it's a pretty good trifecta of backs. And you'd like to have something very similar, that type of situation where, you're gonna hand the ball off, and if the guy gets hot, you're gonna keep handing him the ball, and then you got to spell him, and you got to have the same type of guy or a guy with that kind of skill set to go in and do the same thing. So you try to find that out. You try to look at your like the quarterback room. I like the 3 guys we have as you go through this and trying to evaluate how your roster is going to work.
So at this point, do you guys have a set number in mind for how many guys you want to keep for each position, or is that still work in progress?
We have numbers, and like another discussion in it. But if you do that, what happens to your linebackers numbers? Is it 7, 6, or 5? What's your D line number? So we'll have to. We're still. I mean, we write the number down and then we put the placard underneath them, and you sit there and go, okay, wow, okay. But then you got to reach over to the other position you're taking. So we go through that exercise pretty often right now.
Do you have a feel for how you use the starters on Saturday?
Not necessarily. We have talked about it. We are going to most certainly play them. How far they a good example would be Chase Roulier. We have a pitch count for Chase. Once he hits that number, we're taking him out, and then we'll go from there.
You often talk about the position flexibility for the offensive line being tested with some guys being out. How do you feel about that group, particularly with like the guards and tackle? How many guys do you feel like can do that?
See, that's a real hard one for us, Ben, just because of the fact that, you really want to see a guy at a particular position, but, like Sadiq went down and now we had to move a guy and say, God, we really wanted to see him at tackle, but we moved him to guard and he actually played pretty good. And that's, you just go, oh, wow, that's something to think about now because, he's showing you he does have position flex. He can play tackle, but he can also play guard. So that's a huge plus.
Take a couple more.
With Sanders, is it hamstring or is it even?
Hamstring.
Wes Schweitzer headed into the 10 about halfway through. Is there any issue there?
Not necessarily. A little bit of concern, though. He did land on his hip, and it kind of got sore on him. So we pulled him out and sent him up to shower up and start getting some treatment on it. And he'll see. He'll get rechecked afterwards, and we see where he is.
And with Curtis having played Saturday, now 2 straight practices, do you feel like this is a probably one of his better stretches in terms of his participation?
Yes, very much so. One of the things that we talked about was just how much more. Again, like I said, there is a plan, a very fluid plan. It's almost adaptable as he starts to get the callousness he needs to practicing every day. We increase a little bit more each day. These last 2 days have been a delight. It really has, because we've been able to put some things in for him specifically. And we'll see how he is when he comes in tomorrow morning. And I know Al and I talked a little bit about it. We were encouraged that Curtis wanted to do more today. It's been kind of cool to watch him, come back and really be more and more confident about where he is. So we'll continue with that.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.